Friends, Brian here for Yes You Can Play Guitar, and it's absolute an honor and a joy today to talk to the one and only Morris Hayes, keyboards for Prince and New Power Generation. And also, we always have our good friend of the channel, the Solitary Adventurer, all the way across the pond. Thanks for joining us, Chris. All right, I'll let you start off.
Okay, thanks again, Morris. This is going to be fun. It's always great to get any time with you. So what we've been doing, Brian and I, is sort of approaching these interviews as an interview with you and about your life, and then obviously the Prince connection that is sort of something that we want to cover. It just comes about naturally. So I'm curious, how did music come into your life?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on here on your show and everything, and appreciate it. I grew up in the church, man, and music has always been around me, since I'm a kid, and just being at church and, church music and everything. And then my mom sang at church, and she wanted to play piano, so my dad bought her a piano, and, when we were small. And so once we got in our new house and everything, we got a piano, and she would play on it and press on it. And so, I was just always able to like kind of go and bang on it and mess around with it. And then things just started to get more and more gradually more into it as I was, going to church and kind of like started kind of playing a little bit and then just, kind of developing into like playing at church. And I was pretty terrible, but over time, they don't worry about it too much at church. It's just the willingness to participate and do your little part. And it just as time went on, it just become more. I became more interested, and I was really into art, and I actually got a scholarship to the university for art because I like to draw. The idea was I wanted to make my own comic books. I was really big time into like comic books and Mad Magazine and things like this, and I wanted to make my own comic books and everything. But as I got into college, I used to have to cross through the music department a lot, and I would always be late because I would stop at these various pods and hear musicians like, either wailing on sax or playing the piano. There's a piano in every room, but some people would come in there and they put their guitar and amp in there and they play. And I just stop and peep through they got these little sliver windows. And I, look through the window, they'd be like, wow, they're getting it in, man. And I just was every day, man, on my way to Arlington, I just had to cross through there. And I just more and more just started leaning. And I finally got in a college band and got in there. I wasn't that great, but I had a bunch of equipment that I could kind of collected. And so that was kind of my way in. And it just kind of morphed into that. It was a process, but things just started leaning more away from art and more into the musical side.
So I've got about 4 different avenues that I'd like to cover there. I'm sure Brian's the same.
Sure.
So the first one is the art side of things. Is that something that you've carried on with in the background throughout your career?
It's one of those things where if you don't lose it, you lose it kind of thing if you don't use it. I've always had an eye for art and an eye for like kind of design, and that kind of helps in music, when you're looking at things, and so I've always managed to keep that just kind of like riding on my shoulder. It's like one of those kind of things that I like. Prince used to tell me, so I would come up with all of these different names and different types of things. He told me, he said, you're really good at like making up names and doing different things like that. And so it just was always an artistic side, and that I always tried to maintain and utilize wherever it was available. You know what I mean? So that was always cool.
I have a question about the art aspect of it.
Yep.
Marvel or DC?
Man, growing up, and that's the thing. I was a cross platform. I was just like, right now, if you ask me Mac or PC, I'll say Mac. But back then, I was both. Because Superman was like, of course, for every kid back in the day. I mean, brother, I'm 60, so you know, it wasn't like the proliferation of comics like it is today. It's so many things. It was just like there was a few. There was Batman, there's Superman, there's Spider-Man, and the Hulk. And it's like, you know, and so for me, I'm an old school. I go back to the main cats, and then all of the other additions as they would come. Bro, all of my money, all of my allowance, all of my I had the crazy, I would be a millionaire, brother. I would be a millionaire today had I kept those comic books, had I had any concept that this could be worth money, bro, I would be a billionaire probably by now. I had comic books stacked up. Like my mom was like, bro, like what is all of this crap? Like they're everywhere. Because I would like Mad Magazine, you know, all of the different I loved all of them, man, and that's where all of my time went because and then I try to draw my own. I even made my own kind of, you know, like Pony Boy and you know all of these different things that I created, you know. So, but I started out DC, man, and I got into Marvel because of like Spider-Man and like some of the other ones. But I was a DC cat starting out, man.
Before I forget, I just want to ask Morris, what was your first keyboard? Your first electric keyboard that you got?
My first electronic keyboard I got, and this is really dope, man. I got a Moog satellite.
I knew you were going to say Moog. I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah, it was a Moog satellite, and it was like that was awesome. And then the other two that to come after that would be like the cornerstone. The next one was a Fender Rhodes 88 stage, and then I got a Farfisa professional that Sly Stone used to play. Not it wasn't Sly Stone's keyboard, but it's one like Sly used to use. Like it's Farfisa. My grandma bought it at a flea market, man, at like $50 at a flea market. And I had no idea what I had, you know, but it's the same one. Like I was watching Sly and the Family Stone on something, me and Prince, and Sly came on and he was playing. I said, "Oh, I got one of them." Prince like, "You got one of those?" He said, "Where is it?" I said, "It's in Chicago." He said, "You got to go get it. You got to go get it." And somebody had stolen it. When I went to go to get it, I had my the Farfisa and a thing called a Freeman string symphonizer.
Okay.
Freeman, and it's a rare keyboard, and I regret greatly that I left it in that storage because it was gone when I got back to Chicago to go collect. Both of them were gone. Somebody broke in and stole them, and I don't even know for how long they had been stolen. You know, but that Freeman was crazy, man. It's like it had a unique sound. I've never heard anything else like it. I don't know of any models of it that's out. I have to check around because it had a very interesting. It was like a kind of like an ARP Omni, but it just was kind of brown and boxy. You know, wood. It was like wood. It was crazy, man. And
yeah,
I wish to God because that would be so. I would be rich because it's so rare. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my first one was a Moog, man.
Neat.
And I always loved it. You know.
Did you ever try any other instruments other than keyboards and piano?
Yeah, I mean, I mess with drums a little bit. I practice. You know, I have a drum set. I have like 3 drum sets now, and I can make a beat, but I'm not proficient like enough to play a drum gig at it. But I would play drums with Prince one time when he wanted to groove, and just with me and him around, he wanted to play bass or play guitar. I just put a beat. And the only problem with Prince is, man, he jammed for like 3 hours, man. I'm like, bro, I'm not a real drummer. I can't. I get bored. Number one, I get bored. And number two, I'm not that great. And Prince is like, man, he's intense, man. So he's serious business. You know, I pissed him off like one time at his house, man. He was really mad because I just kept getting bored and I kept changing up the groove, man. And he just put his guitar. He said, Morris, he said, if you're gonna play, man, respect the instrument, man. Like, do it right, man, and just play the groove. And I'm like, bro, I'm not a drummer. I'm not, But he was deadly serious. He was deadly serious, man, about like respecting the instrument. If you're gonna play it, play it. If you're not, then don't. I'll figure something else out. I'll play drums, but if you're gonna play, man, play. That's the way he was. He just wanted to, whatever you picked up, you wanted you to play do the best you could on it all the time, man, all the time. It ain't no jacking around at any point. It's like play it like you mean it and do it right. That's where he was with it.
Yeah, that puts me in mind of something that Levi's teacher said about wishing Prince good luck before they went on stage. And Prince sort of snapped at him, like there ain't no such thing as good luck. We've put the practice in, that's why we're going to be good.
Man, I can't believe Levi told him that, man, because Levi ought to know better than that one. As soon as you said it, I just went, he said, what? I'm like, oh God, no, not the Prince. Yeah, Prince would correct you on that one, man, for sure.
Speak to that. What was it about him? Is it just a work ethic, the Midwestern work ethic, or is it something more?
I I I, I didn't grow up in the Midwest, so I'm not really sure about the Midwestern work ethic. What I do know is there's a Prince work ethic that this cat was an anomaly, and I think, but only in the sense that I've since I've been around Prince, I've met a lot of other celebrities, and they share a common thing, a common thread between anybody that's at the top of their game. There's a very similar line of things that goes through them, like the James Browns and the Whitney Houston's and the Stevie Wonders, and all of those people. They share a common thread, man. They all are perfectionists in terms of they want to be the best at everything that they're doing, and and when you want to be the best, that means you have a work ethic. You work longer than anybody. You work harder than anybody. Like everything is a detail that has to be addressed, and all of those types of things. And they're obsessed with the amount of time that they put in, and the people that work with them. They demand the best out of all of the people that surround them. I don't care what part of it is, whether it was music, whether you worked in wardrobe, whether you worked in accounting, whether you worked in wherever it was. If you were working with us, you were at the height of your game. I don't care if you were the freaking janitor. You had, like, everybody had a level of quality that they had to operate at in order for him to be cool with having you around, because he wanted everybody to hold up their end of the deal, man. And that was important. He told me one time, and we were just like playing these house parties, man. So many house parties. Like we turned down like really high paying gigs just because he just wanted to jam at the house. I kind of had a bad night one night, and it just messing around and just hit a few dog notes, man. And Prince was like, he cleaned my clock, brother, and was like, hey, man, 10 or 10,000. Every show is the same, man. We do the best. I don't care if it's 10 people here or 10,000. You play the same show, man. Period. There ain't no slack, because everything you do, the last thing you do is how you judge. And if you come out here playing notes of dog notes, man, and technical issues and stuff, he said, man, people remember that, man. And it's just once it's out there, it's in the ether. And he don't like it to be anything less than the best you got. That's just the way he was.
I heard you say in other conversations about you knew your place in the room, or you knew your place in the band.
Sure.
Now, having been like on a much smaller level, a regional musician, I get that. I understand it. So that tells me a lot about you were very easy to work with, and you had a good personality, and you're very professional. But that knowing your place, do you think some people, we don't have to mention names, but do you think that's something that you've seen people struggle with?
Absolutely, brother. The two biggest things that I see people that struggle with, especially with Prince, is number one, you don't know your place in the room, and you don't know the guy that you're working for. Those are two big issues and two big things. Prince. I'm a man, bro. I grew up listening to as a kid. Before I even really could play, man, I had a gift unrealized. I liken it to like, Superman before you had superpowers and stuff. It's just like, you could do certain things other kids couldn't do. When I would put on I lived out here in the woods, man, and in this very house that I'm in now, is where I grew up. And we were out in the middle of nowhere, brother, and we didn't have like AM radio was sucked for the R&B station, but the FM stations that played rock and roll was clear as a bell. And I used to have these headphones. I put these headphones on, man, and I just be like grooving, man. And my brother was a DJ, so whenever he'd buy albums, or I'd go or go in a record store, I would pick up albums and read credits to all of the songs I like Steely Dan and like Led Zeppelin and all of these different ones, Jimi Hendrix, all the different ones that I would listen to on the rock and roll side, Supertramp, all of these people. I would pick up the thing and read the credits. And what I kept seeing was these familiar names that kept showing up on everybody's records, like Greg Fillinganes and like, you know, Al Schmidt and like all of these cats who were like engineers. And because I just wanted to know like who, and then it just started being like, wait a minute, this guy's playing on this, but he's playing on Stevie Wonder, he's playing on Michael Jackson, he's playing over here. You know, you got all of these cats that, you know, like Donald Fagen would use like these session guys that are just like, you know, and then I'd see Jerry Hay, and I'd see like all of these cats that's like on these records, and then all of these people. And so that was a big deal for me. And you know, so when I got to like to the Prince thing, you know, I had already like understood a lot of the people and a lot of the stuff, and I was like a fan of these people, you know, like and so I understood that I was not Chick Corea, I was not Herbie Hancock, you know, I was more on a technical side. When I got into music, you know, I was more of a geek in terms of like synthesis and stuff, you know, and that's where my love kind of fell. You know, Barbarella is a technical. He can play, man. He can read music. You put a sheet of music in front of him, man. He goes. It's like pow, pow, pow. Renato Neto, same pow, pow, pow. You know, these kids been reading music since they're 5 years old. You know, I didn't do it that way. I kind of got into music. I'm a late bloomer. I got into like college. A lot of people from my high school, you know, I'm from a small town, man. And so, of course, people start seeing you on TV and they're like going, wait a minute, Morris Hayes, the dancer, the dancing bulldog. They're like, yeah, you know, he played with Prince. They're like, play what? Like, it's like the dancing dude. He with Prince. So it would be this crazy, like, well, how did that work? Where did that come from? You know, because I was a late bloomer and I got into it. But I got into when Prince first had me doing this thing with this band for the Glam Slam for his club. I remember him asking me. I had two keyboards, man, and a couple of things in the rack, and he was like, "Man, how are you getting that sound? Like you got this big sound, but you only got a couple of things over there." And I just said, "Oh man, I just know how these two keyboards really well, and I know how to layer stuff. I know how to, you know, play these chords." And he just was like freaked out that I knew how to get number one, that I had an attention to detail when it came to recreating sounds and the technology. And I got into that, and that was the piece that interested him in me. Is like I came from church, I had a gospel kind of flavor, but I also knew this technology. One of my greatest claims to fame to this day, that is my best, and it's not even something that everybody knows. It's just to me, I know it. Is Prince came to my rehearsal with my group, and we're playing two of his songs in our set. You know, we playing cover stuff. So we playing the, you know, Time and whoever else we're playing. But we had two Prince songs in the set. And I had a sampler that was dedicated to when I put my finger on a key and stepped on the sustain pedal, I had drum loop. And I put these two drum loops on the Prince songs. 17 Days, I put a European group, TKA. I put a loop under his track and it blew his mind. He was like, whoa, 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 stop the press. He went back and told Levi, and Levi called me and said, "Man, what did you do?" And I'm like, "What you talking about?" He says, "Man, Prince came in here and says, stop the presses. Morris is over there playing our songs, and he's got loops under our songs. He's got these tracks under, and he says we got to do that, but use our own tracks to put under our music." I just took some other people's beats and then put 17 Days on the top of it and blew his mind, man. That is the way he did it for the rest of his career. From that point on, he said, he says, I don't want Tommy or Rosie doing it. He said, put it in Michael Bland stuff, so that he can play it, and so he can just put that in the drum rig. I played it because I would DJ it. I would like take the sample and like, and he was like, "Oh my God, that's crazy," and decided that that's what he was going to do. And from that day forward, even before I got in the band, they started playing loops his own. He'd go in the studio and take the beats for what was the one that I really loved, Dorothy Parker. Take that so he could put every 4-bar clip of all of those songs in Michael's drums, and then Michael could trigger them on a pad and trigger them on a foot switch, and then now it sounds like the record. That's one of the things. And then Prince did that until he was gone.
Yeah, and he had that piano set up, didn't he, where you could trigger those very same samples off the keys.
Yeah, I put all of those samples. I chopped all of those up and put them in his keyboard. And I had a gold keyboard that I did the same thing with the Open Labs keyboard that I had. That I put all of those samples on buttons on this thing, and I had them at his house. And all he had to do was just hit the button. I had a 10-minute track for each one, and on each track I put an ending to where, like, once it got to the end, if he decided like he wanted to jam a long time, I told him, I said, Prince, I set this up where each one of these tracks are going to run for 10 minutes. So if you just get happy, and it's going to be a swell. Once you hear that swell, you got 4 bars before the bomb explosion happens. So no matter where you are on the stage, when you start hearing that, he knows where the end's going to be, and he's counting bars, and he'll finish it just like he planned it that way. That was just the setup. And I put him on his keyboard that way. All he had to do was hit the note and hold a sustain patch. And then I also did splits so that I'd put a clav on top so that he could play a clav and it wouldn't hold, but the sample would hold. Just by you can set the keyboard up to split where only this part down here sustains when you hold the pedal, and this part up here does not. So you can jam on top of your groove. And man, it was like,
yeah. Well, that explains a lot of what I've heard.
And so to get back to your statement, understanding my place is that I don't have to solo. I don't have to get a solo. Tommy did that very well. Renato did that very well. But he would give me some occasionally. But that wasn't like my thing. Michael Bland used to tell me all the time, he said, I hate soloing. But when he did it, he killed it. He was I'm like, you don't like the solo and you solo like that? I mean, I'm like, God dang, that's crazy, bro. But that's what he said. He said, I don't like doing solos. Michael's a pocket drummer. He's all about timing. He's about like clock. He is a clock. He's like Bernard Purdy. His whole thing is like chop, chop like this. I used to have John Blackwell tell me, like, I'm gonna whoop Michael Bland. I'm gonna whoop you. I said, Black, you will never whoop Michael Bland unless you figure out how to come back on the one and your time and between tricks, biting the sticks and flirting. I said, all that look cool. I give you kudos, but you will never whoop Michael Bland until your tempo is on the money. That's what Michael Bland was about. And that was my little bro. And I just tell him the truth because that's what that's the reality of it. And more than anything else, your job is, like as Bernard Purdy would say, my job is to keep time, brother. That's what my job is. And that's what your job is, to keep time. And so I said, that's where you will fall down when you try to whoop Michael Bland, because he gonna always come on the one. There was a song that Michael did that Prince said, okay, Michael, I want you to play everywhere but the one. Don't hit the 2, hit the 3, 4, but don't hit on the one. And it's called Ass Whooping in a Trunk. And if you want to get your head twisted, go find that song, and Michael Bland will make you throw up your lunch meat. I'm telling you right now, it's crazy.
Sorry, quick one. Were you ever tempted to sample Michael so that when Prince said you jump on the drums, you could maybe trigger a loop and freak him out?
Yeah, what it is, Mike and Sonny made these discs, smooth ass grooves and funky loops. you know, that they did, and that has Sonny and Mike. Because one day, you know, we were at rehearsal, man, and I came in, and Sonny and Mike were just trying to trick each other and grooving, and just killing, just playing stuff like, and they were just right, and I'm like, I'm sitting there and I'm standing at the door, and I'm like, oh my God, these dudes. Prince walks in, right? I'm standing at the back door. I just stand in the door and just stop at the door and just listen to him. And then about a couple of, maybe a minute later, Prince walks in. He said, "What's happening?" And I said, "Man," I said, "Sonny and Mike up here, man, trying to trick each other, and they just, it's crazy, man. This doesn't make any sense." I said, "We should make a record." Prince goes, "Yeah, we should make a record." He turns around. There's a phone on the back wall at the sound stage that's like right by the doors when you walk in to the left. He goes over to the phone, calls Ray in the studio and those guys and Magoo and all these guys. He says, get some guys over, come set up all the gear in Studio A. We're gonna make a record. Go get some tape from the vault, and we're gonna we'll make just like that, bro. And people start moving. It's like that. That's Exodus. That's that record that came out of that. Because I told him, I said, "Man, this is crazy, man. Sonny and Mike, just stupid. They just in here, they trying to trick each other out the groove, and they can't even do it. They can't trick themselves out of timing and just because they're just reading minds. These two dudes are just locked to a point that it's just like." And Prince said, "Okay, so then yeah, we'll make a record just like that, bro." And then just make a call, and then a bunch of people start running around like ants, you know, like to fix what he said. So there's a crew now moving all the equipment out. We just in the middle of just doing that thing. They just said, "Okay, tear it all down, move it into Studio A." And I'm like, God dang, man, this is crazy.
So we have a really awesome Patreon community. There's a lot of really intense Prince fans there. It's a wonderful community. I have a lot of questions from them for you. I'm going to throw in from time to time as we're talking. Sure. Since we're on this topic, I'm going to ask you a question from a Patreon. We have U.S. agent. He says to me, he said, "Who did Morris prefer as a drummer, Michael Bland or John Blackwell?" I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, here's the thing. I never like to really get into to comparisons and things like that because I love all of my bandmates.
Yeah.
And they both had different things that made them what they were. Both of them are great drummers. I like Michael Bland. I always tell the truth. I like Michael Bland because Michael paid attention to tempo, and with Prince, that's everything. Michael's tempo was just like, I asked him to play a 95 BPM beat one time. I just say, "Mike, play 95," and I turned on the tempo. It was 95, bro. Now, wow. Michael and Sonny both have perfect pitch. They have perfect pitch. All right, I get that they got perfect pitch. Prince didn't have perfect pitch, but he had like incredible relative pitch. You could play if you played an A, he knew where C was now. If you played the A, that was his reference key, and now Prince knew where C was. Great reference pitch. But Mike and Sonny had this thing. They could just tell you what pitch a fart was in because I saw him do it once. And Sonny said it's almost in B flat. It's like right between B and B flat. And I just said, "Bro, this is crazy. Like, this is crazy." But Michael was that about tempo. That was important to me, playing samples live and without a sequencer, because we didn't use tracks. We played to a click, to a loop, a sample loop. And that had to match up everything. And then there was a few songs that did not have a loop that Mike had to know what that tempo was. Because if he didn't, my samples wouldn't match. And that is incredible to me. John was an extraordinarily great show drummer. He had all of these techniques and all of this stuff that it was very flashy and very showy like, But I struggle with him sometimes just making sure tempo was there, because that's my job. I have to make sure, like Black, you got to come back in on the one. You got to I got to know where that tempo is. And we would have this back and forth about that a lot of times. And him and Rhonda sometimes would have a little think of, because Rhonda's about timing too. Her timing is like crazy, so we would have that from time to time. So I love Black had this very wonderful attitude about him, playing and everything. He's very, hey, big bro, I'm gonna do this. So he's just like that little kid is always like, okay, man. But I think when it comes to the lock of the drummers that I played with, Sheila is amazing, and a lot of the drummers, Cora Coleman, she was great. But Michael Bland just had this thing, this where he was very sharp about what it is that he needed to do. Michael the other thing that I thought was amazing about Michael, and I'm going to try to keep my answers succinct, but I want people to get as much information as they can. One of the things about Michael, if you ever go in any of our shows where we like Top of the Pops or some of the music videos where we weren't playing live, Prince would be live, but some of the shows like Top of the Pop, it's like, the band is like, we got a track and stuff, but Prince's stuff would always be hot. His vocals, his guitars, and whoever else that needed it, that would be hot. But what Michael did is you couldn't tell looking at him, because he could play exactly every note that he played in the original recording. If you look at him play drums, you cannot tell he's not playing, because he plays every lick just like the record. That's incredible to me.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Like, especially you're talking about Shush. I mean, he could write that music out. That's music, man. It's like you can write it out and play it back so somebody can read those notes. Mike can play that solo just like he wants, just like the record if he wants to. And that was like, I'm out of my pay grade right now, bro. I'm like way out of it. I don't even know how cats think like that. Michael Bland is a freaking genius, So I have a great love for Michael, and of course him being the guy that was there when I came in.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I ask that sort of a pivot on what you've just said? That drum break that Michael did, and it sort of defines what it is to be a Prince drummer, because every drummer who came after, John, Cora, Hannah, they all had to take that solo and recreate it as best they could. Is there something that you've played where you look at, the people who were in the band in the stints that you weren't, where you think, oh, okay, they managed to decode something that I've done?
My thing was, man, I always like to find something cool, like that I could play that was like a thing that made Prince turn his head and go like, yeah, that right there. And I did it like in I Hate You and just some things like that with some of the Hammond stuff and some of the organ stuff. The whole thing with just holding a high note, play all your stuff while you hold a high note, things like that were just simple things that made the song lift and go up and down and add energy to it, things like that, man, that just gave a lot of uplift to the music, And so I don't consider myself a keyboard player that's like I've done these incredible forces. I used to enjoy, for me, what made my job a lot of fun is because, there was a stint of where for one time I was the only keyboard player in Prince's band, which that was crazy because I was the first cat, I think, that ever was in a band with Prince that I was the only keyboard player. And Prince's stuff is keyboard heavy. So I had a task in the late 90s to like reproduce all of Tommy's parts, my parts. And I had to deploy a lot of things and like be able to do that, like sample like lines and things and still play all of my parts, man. It was hell, man. I don't even know. I think about it now and I go, how in the hell did I even do it? Because there was so much stuff. There was some complexities to it. I had to learn all of these things. But there's some parts that I did on some, music with the Hammond and with some of the stuff that I enjoyed because it changed the sound of the band, because adding that churchy component in the Hammond to that level. Not that he hadn't put organ on some other tracks. I mean, Adore is one of his dopest tracks, and it's got that organ thing going on it, and a lot of tracks. But it just wasn't like the center part of the sound. It just was a thing that happened on the record here and the record there. But by the time I came around, the sound, with Tommy on the whirly and the Rhodes and me on the organ was just really a thing. And it just was in that sound of music for that duration of time that we were together, So that I appreciate that, man, and I like the fact of that. But what was great for me is that Prince always had he had some cool keyboard players, and he had some real dope ones, like Cassandra O'Neill and Barbarella and Renato Neto. Neto used to I told Neto, I said, bro, I'd just be glad to come to work just to hear what you're gonna do today, because he could just do whatever he felt like. It just bananas, I love my teammates, man. And it just like Prince should have described to me how we were as a band was like what the winning Chicago Bulls, when they were setting up their dynasty, Prince was like, we always tell me, as Morris, we got to look at ourselves like the Chicago Bulls. Michael Jordan was one of his favorite players, as like many people, until Steph Curry, got around, and Steph became one of his favorites. But he always liked the team aspect of the Chicago Bulls. He said, Morris, I'll shoot the three. You're Dennis Rodman. You get the rebound. Yeah. You kick it out. You said everybody's got a role to play. Everybody's got a part to put in. One of our favorite songs that we used to do was "In Time," Sly and the Family Stone, and that song is one of the funkiest songs in the world, because if you separate everybody's parts out, it sounds like a bunch of chicken scratch. And with the exception of maybe like the bass, it's like, you got one guitar going chink, doodle chink, and it's like, and then the horn, and it's just like these little pieces of, he got a part, he has a part, she has a part, and it's in the bass is what, that's what's going through the track. That's like the cohesive part of it, and what the bass and drums is doing, which is always your foundational piece. But that song is funky because of the orchestration and everybody's part in it. And so that's what I was there. Prince always used to call me the glue. He said, Morris, you know what to do. Just fill up the spots. You're the glue. Put this in here and do this over here, and just listen to what's happening and find a place to fit in. And it's just like, he knew how to delegate parts to people. He knew your strengths. He knew your weaknesses. I wasn't a great soloist. That's not my thing. But I could play these complex samples and different things and play these parts. He used to do. I remember Lenny used to hang out with us a lot. Lenny Kravitz, and he'd come over and hang out. And Prince would just tell me, Morris, just play your parts on this song, just your parts. And with I'd play it, and Lenny be like, God dang, all of that is just by yourself? That's all of you? And he said, how do you do that, Morris? And then Prince said, ancient Chinese secret. He'd be like that. He say that because he said that's what each cat is bringing to. Now, when I add the other key, when I add Barbarella, it's going to even get more stupid, because now Tommy's got his stuff to bring to it. And so it was just, and knew where you landed in that collection. So that was the big.
I wanted to say, Morris, you talked about something earlier. I don't know if a lot of the non-musician viewers would really, maybe don't quite understand. I've played in some bands with some keyboards, and I have a little idea of some of the advancement. We were talking about Moogs in the 70s, but then the 80s, MIDI comes in, and the patching and looping. Like, I don't know if people really understand how much work that is to be constantly keeping up with the technology and new patches and new sounds. That sounds like you had a hell of a workload on you.
But I'm going to tell you where the genesis of it is. When I was going to school in Chicago, I used to go to DeVry in Chicago. And, computer school is kind of tough, man. And I mean, I was in it and doing it. I got recruited by this guy that was saying, computers is the future. All right. You're going to learn to do computers. That's the future. I said, computers, huh? They're going to take over. I said, all right, I'm game. I try to do what it do, man. God bless this guy. His name is EJ. He was a manager at the Guitar Center in Chicago on South Side. And EJ would let me come in because I didn't have any really gear at the time in Chicago. And I didn't have things that, so I had to go to the Guitar Center to kind of get my fix. I was one of them irritating dudes that would be down there playing the Prince tracks or whoever, you know, and I got the chance to try out all of the new stuff that came in because I couldn't afford any of it. But I, you know, the Moog, Memory Moog, all of that stuff, the Oberheims, and man, I would be playing this stuff. And he just said, "Man, you should come and work here. You're selling more stuff than the guys that work here.
Wow.
You're just playing, and people are buying this stuff. Just like, yeah, that's dope. Give me that keyboard." And he said, "You should." I said, "I can't work here, man. I don't have time. I got school. But I appreciate you letting me come in here and just study like what all of this stuff is. You know, they let me have a run of the place, and they were super cool and patient with me. I wouldn't be obnoxious, but they just let me have it, and that's what really got my side of the technology side like really cool because I got to quickly see all of the new equipment, figure out how it works, talk to the experts that were there at the Guitar Center that helped me out with you know at that young age, man, and kind of dealing with it, man, and they were just so cool, man, and that's what really got me into it. So I always wanted to be on the cutting edge of like what was happening, not the bleeding edge, but the cutting edge. And so it was funny because when I came in after, you know, Prince saw me doing the whole looping thing, when I got in, I inherited a rig that Rosie was playing. And it had like an Emax and some other stuff in it, some Proteus, like some stuff. And now all of that stuff to me was like, bro, I had a Roland at that time. I had did like a publishing deal with these guys, and I had like a Roland 770, and like this thing is like $8,000.
Oh yeah.
This sampler, and I managed to get a deal on it. This thing's crazy. So I told Prince, I said, Prince, no disrespect, but you know your gear sucks. I like my stuff is better than yours, and you're Prince. And he said, well, fix it. You know. So what I did was I had him. I had the Skip Johnson, who was our production manager at the time. Skip, who was married to Grace Slick, by the way. I always used to say, "Hey, Skip, that's married to Grace Slick." You know, that was our guy. And so I told Skip, I said, Skip, Prince said for me to fix this rig because, you know, your sampler samples at 39.7 kilohertz. And I said, that sucks. I have to convert all of the samples into mine, which I call Roland, or my text called Roland, and said, we need a converter program that will convert all of these samples that Rosie had into 44.1 that I'm going to be using on this sampler. And it was a thing, man. They created a patch for us to use on to create to cross all our samples out of that Emax into our Rolands. And so once I fixed all of the gear, man, that's when Prince was like, "Oh, so you can do?" Because I said, "Yeah, man, my stuff's killer. Yours suck." And then he was like, "Okay, we'll fix it." And then he felt once he saw the capacity and the capability of it, he says, "Oh, you can do that? Okay. So then you can do this and that and this and this and that." And then I really found out I'd screwed up because I ran my mouth too much. And now he was like, "Okay, great, wizard. Now you can do this and that and the other." And I had to like remember and then max out what I knew about that stuff. That he always was in the future. He always. I remember Bobby Z coming and seeing me doing my thing and what we were doing. And Bobby said to me, "This is what he wanted to be doing back when we were the band. This is what you're doing right now is what he wanted us to do back then." That's funny. I got my guy Jerome Benton give me a holler right there.
Oh,
Y'all
hey.
can
Hello,
say hi to
Jerome.
Jerome. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that was
So
the thing.
that's
So I
fascinating.
got into it a long time ago, and I just really it's just been a part of my whole thing is the technology with the looping and the sampling and all of that stuff.
I play a game with myself at times where I take one of the tracks from one of the later albums and see if I can substitute it on something, you know, maybe from the 80s and see,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because in my opinion, I don't think he suffered from any sort of degradation. You know, his popularity went up and down, but his talent was
Sure.
the same throughout the years. I know that obviously you were something of a fan before you ever came into
Oh
the
yeah.
Purple Orbit. What type of fan
Mm-hmm.
were you?
I was the type that I appreciated the musicianship of Prince. I remember my brother had some of his records, and I would play it. And I remember like Head. I just listened to the solo and what Matt Fink did on Head. I was just like, God, dog, this is crazy. Like, just that was one of the cold-blooded solos I've ever, like I'm like, this dude has a groove on this song that was just like, as Mark Brown would say, congruous. It was a crazy groove, and then when that solo happened, and how Matt used the filter to, and then he used portamento only in certain places. It's like he crafted a solo that was like dynamic because of it. Just wasn't like he just played off a bunch of notes and did a bunch of stuff. He actually had like stuff where he gave you a master class in synthesis, how to take filters real time and use it like use a cutoff or resonance and just or just a pitch thing, or just go in and do that. So for me, it was like, how did he do that? What did he use to make this? And then when he went up to the top of the keyboard, he knew when to turn the portamento on, so that when it went, and then the LFO, he had to turn the LFO to where that would, at the higher uses of it, would completely go wacky. Because I noticed that was something that Prince used to like to do in order to make his sounds different from anybody else's on that keyboard. He turned the pitch wheel on and leave it up high so that everything is like dreamy and that's because he just would turn up the pitch wheel and leave it up like Dorothy Parker. He took the Fender sound and then pushed up the modulation wheel and then just played the chords on it. And now he's got a totally different sound. You're going like listen how warbly that keyboard is, that DX7. And I knew all of the keyboards. The minute I hear a keyboard, I know what it is. It's like, that's a DX7. And he's got the port. He's like, but instead of just using it a little bit, he just turned it on full blast and just started playing it. I used to love the Prince used to have these incredible Fairlight synthesizers. It was like way out of my pay grade. I didn't even see Fairlights at the Guitar Center. So they're these high end keyboards, these incredible samplers. And it wasn't until I started playing stuff off of Sign of the Times where I had to go to the vault and get the tapes. And I got the tapes, and I'm like asking the engineer, I'm like, where's the rest of the track sheets? Like, where are the rest of this track sheet? It's only 16 tracks. Like, where's the rest? He said, that's it. I said, what? I said, you're telling me Sign of the Times, all this stuff is 16 tracks? And I'm like, what the? And so Prince had got this Fairlight, and he was like enamored with this thing. And so all of that stuff, a lot of that's the Fairlight. And what I found that he did, like on Sign of the Times itself, we used to have these big arguments with the guitar player. I used to have these arguments like, we're trying to decipher these chords, because the cover band I played with, they wanted everything to sound like the record. So they want to know exactly. I would have not in a million years figured out that what Prince did was he went on the Fairlight, and on the pre-chorus, he just hit the lowest sample and held it. And just over time, serendipity, just synchronicity, whatever you want to call it, the chord would change just because it's going but over time that is changing and I was like, oh my God. So we were all wrong. It's just like he didn't play it that way. The sample evolved that way. He put it down and held it until the whole pre-chorus went over it, and it just, everything fell in the right place. And I just was like, holy shit, this is crazy. I never would have figured it out in a million years, man. And it made the song what it was. That chord pad, you had to just try to redecipher it in your own way, because that you'd never do it in a million years, because that sample was played like 2 or 3 times lower than what the actual original sample was. And he was just smart enough to do that and just make it sound unique like that. So that's the kind of stuff. And I always got off on that, because it's like, how did he think of that? I mean, like, how did he think of it? Just like, and there's just tons and tons of examples of records that he did where he did some kind of trick. He used to have a thing called a Publison. And this Publison was a piece of gear that's like, it's 20 grand, 15, 20 grand or something, like crazy amount of money for this effect. And it would do things like samplers at the time couldn't do, like same pitch but different speed, or same speed with a different pitch. And he would play like horn lines that the horn section did not play, that he would just hit different samples and hit them in certain places, and it would completely reharmonize or change all of the way that the parts were going. That now made the horn players sound like they were geniuses. It was just just crazy like that.
Did you when your time with MPG, did you stick with Roland, or did you experiment with like Korg or other brands of keyboards?
Oh yeah, I mean, I used a lot of Roland. I just at the time Roland just had just some meaty stuff, man. And Prince liked Roland at the time. He he actually kind of like got me to where I just wanted to like choke him sometimes because he would just really just overuse. I like using a lot of different stuff because everything's got different textures to it. Like Korg sounds different from Yamaha. Yamaha sounds different from Korg. So when I first got in, we were using Yamaha controllers, the KX series stuff that didn't really make any sounds. They were just controllers. And then I had a rack full of like gear. Like I did use like some EMU stuff, and I used some of the. But then when I found the Roland stuff, I had multi-timbral type of situation where I could use 8 tracks. And I had I was using some Mac computers using opcodes, Studio 5s, and was using their basically their mapper, so that I could take all of my keyboards and my setup, which I had about 6, and I could map them out to do some of the craziest stuff. I had Paul McCartney's people like say, "Dude, how are you doing this? Will you send us your algorithm, how you like do this thing?" It was crazy, man. And so what I was able to do was put all of these. I had 3 samplers because we were playing Claire Fisher string arrangements. Like my whole sampler would be just Claire's parts on the song, and then I had another sampler that would preload to the next song so that they would instantly, because it took 30 seconds to load a fully blown 32 gig 760. It took about 30 seconds for that to load up. Prince goes from song to song like this. There is no time to load. So I had to have 3 samplers so that one could be loading while one's playing, and they would do that one and then the next one. So they would skip from sampler to sampler, so that they would automatically be from when I hit the switch on my LRC, my Lexicon LRC, that thing would switch all of the keyboard patches, all of the samplers would preload. That's why I told Prince, I said, Prince, I gotta have a set list, bro, because I have to program this, because he changes the set every show. And so I need to know what load number is on the samples so that I can make sure that loads up, because you go directly. I can't change like, okay, what patch am I using on this one, and this one? Bro, that's like a nightmare. It's like you having 6 stump boxes and you got to change them all 6 different things at once. You got to go click, 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 pow, pow, ping, ping, pow, pow, and in the dark, and then with the lights going out, and you don't have time for that, man. So I had to know what was. I just would beg him, like, please, 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 for the love of Christ, Prince, I need to have a set list so I can kind of arrange this to where I know what's happening. And sometimes you just go with the flow, and I just had to figure it out. Then that's when you spend extra time on your own with your rig, memorizing where I had a jukebox, basically 127 positions where I could put songs, and I can tell you every slot was filled.
Wow.
Sometimes I'd have to ask him, what can I get rid of to put some new stuff in? I said, Prince, I'm maxed out. I need to know what I need to get rid of so I can add these new songs. We got in a really big fight one time because he kept asking for stuff, and I said, I don't have any more room. And he's like, well, we got into this real big. I won't go into it because it was kind of ugly. Because I had to, I'm 6'5", and sometimes, he can wear you out. But he had got my goat this day, and I was like, I'm not trying to feel it today, brother, and we're gonna have a problem. There's gonna be some furniture moving around. So I just told him, I just said, Prince. He said, when is it gonna be ready, Morris? And I said, well, you can go and come back. And when you come back, it still ain't gonna be ready. And then it was like, oh, it's gonna be a day today, but I had that. So, but he did acquiesce and came back under my rig and looked at. I put everything on the screen. He said, "Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. You can put that back." And we had to go through and take out about 10 things so that I can put some new stuff in, because it's like I don't. He would max it out. We were a jukebox band because he wanted us to know that any one of these songs he could pull up, man. And I had to like kind of memorize. So same with Tommy. We had to memorize what number. Kiss is number 18 today. So I got to look this over so that I have an idea. If he jumps in the Kiss, I know to just go push 18, and that would automatically trigger everything to go to Kiss patches. So we can do that. So that's how crazy that was.
Did you and Tommy ever just kind of look over each other's rigs and teach each other anything or make any observations? Or
Well, Tommy was extraordinarily helpful to me. You know, I brought a lot of technology with me that I did, but Tommy, knew the ropes and knew a lot of things. And I have to say this, man, because it's funny style, man. In a lot of bands, you have this internal competition thing that happens. It's kind of funny because I'm spoiled, man. I never really experienced that so much, uh, but I've noticed a lot of people that come in sometimes they have, and because we always kind of dealt with stuff kind of more like a family kind of a vibe. I never had any issues with Barbarella. He always was like helpful, always was like trying to make sure that he educated me on how things worked, how things went. I could ask him some stuff, and he never was annoyed or anything like that, man. He always was very helpful. And to me, that was paramount, man, because man, I'm in a situation where I'm with these cats, man. I'm an old guy on the totem pole, and you can get kicked around and a lot of that. I never experienced that, man. Nothing. Sonny gave me a lot of good advice. Michael Bland gave me advice, and Tommy was a good partner, man. There were never any arguments about who does what. I just would always we kind of figured out early on, if it's piano related, maybe sometimes I would do it, but mostly Tommy would do it. I know I'm gonna cover organ and I'm gonna cover some pads, some synth stuff, some different things like that, some chops, and sometimes we both would cover it. But it just was a great communication thing, man, and which is why that band was so great. We rehearsed all the time, we practiced all the time together, even when Prince wasn't there. And so that band was super tight because we went to work like working at McDonald's. Every day we punched the clock and rehearsed whether Prince was there or not, and just went in and played. And then we got to know each other musically, and just we celebrated each other's strength. I knew what he was going to do. He knew what I was going to do. And so it just was that's why that band was like that.